Whew! Alright folks, well if you watched my last video and tried to listen to me go 100 miles a minute, this one's for you because you're the real troopers. I know it wasn't real clear and I actually made a slight error in a couple places, so I want to do a correction video, talk a little bit slower, and just give you the basics and clarify them a little. So basically, what I'm postulating is that the Lorenz equations predict orbital periodicity and axial stability, and I'm going to show you how right now. Just real briefly, for those who aren't familiar with the Lorenz equations, they're used in chaos theory and were created to predict when periodic events would happen out of chaos in weather patterns. They're based on thermodynamics, and they can be used to create very beautiful visualizations such as the butterfly, which is where we get the term the butterfly effect from. And they're also integral in fractals and the Mandelbrot set. The Lorenz equation has three variables, and these are the ones we're going to be working with. There's a few different ways for me to describe the Prandtl number, which are all hypothetical, so I want to gloss over that for now and for this video. However, the geometry is quite simple, and it's based on the diameter of the central body over the diameter of the orbiting body. And in the case of the Earth-Moon system, that's a 4-to-1 ratio approximately. And so we can use a geometry beta number of 4. And the final number is the Rayleigh number, and that's the important one for this model. And that is the timescale for thermal transport via diffusion divided by the timescale for thermal transport via convection speed. And another way to say that is buoyancy divided by viscous force. And this is the one I'm going to show is related to predicting orbital periodicity and axial stability. The Rayleigh number for the satellite is its revolution period, and the Rayleigh number for the central body, the central sun or the central planet around which the satellite or planet orbits, is the rotation period. So the evidence for this, explained quite simply, is that if we look at the Earth's Rayleigh number, it shows a stable homeoclinic orbit, where if we look at the Moon's Rayleigh number, it shows a more toroidal orbit, and homeoclinic orbits are simply regular orbits. And what I mean by that is low orbital eccentricity and low inclination to the orbital plane. Because over time, when those are high, it leads to a more toroidal shape of the orbit around the central body. It's not to say that the moon moves up and down like this every month or every year. It's about the precession of the lunar nodes. But essentially what you have is two codependent Rayleigh variables for the satellite and the central body. And in terms of thermodynamics, that would mean that the two ends of the system have closed loops, which is the planet and the moon, which would basically indicate that gravity and electromagnetism is a consequence of density and simple heat transfer. So there's two ways that we can look at this. We can look at it in terms of the central body or the satellite. And the central body can be either the planet and the satellite can be a moon, or the central body can be the sun and the orbiting body can be a planet. And so when you compare these two numbers, the one that's actually a little bit more scary is the moon's Rayleigh number, because it's actually past its stable point, where if its orbital period gets much longer, it could become unstable because of going up and down so high around the elliptical of its rotation around the Earth. And that's demonstrated by this graphic here, where 27.1 is indicated as an unstable nexus point, because the moon's rotational period is 27.21. Now, I want to clarify that this chart, this Rayleigh number chart here, is not something related directly to the moon. It's something I found on the internet and I created this visual. And this 2.3 number indicates wavelength. And in this scenario, that would be the wavelength of the height that the moon travels up and down around the elliptical of the Earth. And right now that is at a value of 1, not 2.33, which is why I put these extra Earths over here on the left to indicate that it would have to be moving up and down that much. But just look at this diagram and imagine how when the moon was closer, that oscillation was smaller. And so because of this, like any closed loop thermodynamic system, regarding the Earth, with its Rayleigh number being below this 24.06 number, it experiences perturbation, which are slight variations in its axial tilt. And that leads to precession. As this system moves back and forth over time in a cyclical manner, it works itself out as a circle so that it appears we're at the longest part of the cycle, and as Earth starts speeding up again up until Leo, the moon will move slightly closer. And so we don't necessarily need to worry about that, but we need to understand that it's a dynamic system that works on itself, and that the self-corrective nature of it has been playing out since the beginning of the Earth and Moon. And so my conclusion is that solar events such as flares, micronovas, supernovas, these were all meant to balance systems and maintain periodicity in the face of potential chaos. But what you have to remember is that this is a dissipative system. And so eventually the moon will drift away, as all scientists will acknowledge. And the process of it not being linear, of the Earth keeping the moon in check, is this process. And so when they go into perturbations or the strange attractor phase, weird things happen like pole shifts or magnetic flips, which affect the thermodynamics of the Earth. And in that process, the gravity between them pulls in other things, other materials like asteroids and comets. And they add mass to either one in order to balance the system. But more importantly, as a thermodynamic system, it's about heat transfer and ion transfer between the Earth and Moon. So when you look at these two spheres, imagine one is the Earth and one is the Moon, and heat, electricity, and matter flying from the moon to the Earth to stabilize the system. And in addition to that, the sun is acting on this system as well. And so the Earth-Moon system was created by the sun and another planet pulling the Earth and Moon apart. And so the solar flares are aligned to the pole shift. And when that system becomes unbalanced, that's when the energy from the sun comes in to rebalance the planetary system. Because if the planetary system goes out of whack, then the sun goes out of whack. And the sun is the lord and master of us all. And so the other planet-moon pair in our solar system, which we can examine quite simply, is the Pluto-Charon system. And this is a great example of the bifurcation process, and I can show you with this image. Pluto and Charon are mutually tidally locked. That means that they have the same Rayleigh number. That means that the rotation period of Pluto is the same as the revolution period of Charon. Furthermore, the diameter of Charon is just about almost exactly half of the diameter of Pluto. And when we plug them in, we get these homeoclinic orbits, which are hard to see in this image because I couldn't zoom in, but you can see that the end of their orbits point towards each other. And as you increase this Rayleigh number, they stay in homeoclinic orbits up to about 17 hours, at which point it goes into a strange attractor scenario, and the moon is probably going to have to lose mass to move further away at that point. But if you just flip Charon and invert it, you can see that there is a symmetry between the North Pole and the heart shape of Pluto's surface. And that the dark spot on Charon's North Pole comes from taking surface material from Pluto. And in the process, Charon shed material, was able to move further away. And this just goes to prove my theory that giant impacts are impossible between celestial bodies, that as they approach, their densities change, and that causes their Roche limits to change, their spin to change, and it's actually impossible. And that's really mainly due to the fact that things are expanding in a fractalized, orderly way. But anyway, the reason I wanted to show you Pluto was because this symmetry doesn't just happen by chance through accretion and the collision of planets and then reassemblage. It happens through them not hitting and whittling themselves down. And as I said in my other video, I believe it comes from planetary bifurcation, which is the process of moons being born from planets in order to stabilize their orbits, just as children stabilize their parents' orbits. Because the Earth without a moon has no axial stability. And there's no way that Pluto had no axial stability, caught a moon, and then they ended up in this configuration. It's the same for Earth, and it's the same for other planets. There's just no way. And so this is the math. This is why it happens. It's thermodynamics. It's expansion of heat. It's so simple. And so, as I said in my last video, I invite anyone who can do the math with a planetary system with more than one moon to do it and prove this, or disprove it if you can. I don't know it, and I have way more interesting visuals and things that I can show you that proves my theory about the planetary bifurcation process. So if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe. I have a lot more coming, and if you can, support me on Patreon. Thanks, guys.